This recording is going to be all about how we use AEPS scoring notes to better inform our instructional planning and interpret performance over time. So the way that I conceptualize using scoring notes are really the value added. Why would I make the time to not only score something but also to give a note? I usually think of this as playing detective, or if you're familiar with the clue game, I think of Colonel Mustard in the library at the candlestick. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find patterns and trends. So we might have something like participation, or you could put play, or you could put gets along with others, or you could put counting, or knows letters of their first name, whatever it is you want to know if the child can do it. But we want to know more about when they do it, who they do it with, when they're most successful. And so we have these little Venn diagrams in each corner trying to show that there are different variables. For example, group size, or the type of the activity, or the amount of support. These Venn diagrams could take on lots of different shapes and sizes, from the materials that are being used, to the demands of the tasks, to the location of the activity, even to things like the degree of noise in the activity. So what we're trying to find out is if each of these Venn diagrams represents a component of something. So this is grouping. We'd have large group, small group, and one-on-one. And we want to look at see where this intersects. When is the child able to participate? Are they able to participate in large, small, and one-on-one, or just one-on-one and small but not large group? So we're trying to play detective again and figure out where there's overlap in terms of a child's strengths or demonstration of skills. Same thing if we do the type of activity. Does the child participate during routine activities, child-directed activities, and planned activities, or one or some combination of? And then lastly, does the child participate, however they do so with verbal reminders, with full physical support, or just with casual visual cues? So how can this child be most successful so that everyone in the learning environment knows that the child will need reminders and will need visual cues in order to participate? So what we're really trying to do is find patterns, and we won't go into great detail about each of these. Right now we're just trying to understand that we're looking for patterns, but you should see the notion of AEPS scoring notes kind of embedded. So quality, assistance, behavior interfering, and direct test or direct prompt. So that's the Q, the A, the B, and the D. There are from AEPS data as well that come from our numerical scores and sort of this pattern of scoring, but we're really going to focus in on a few of these around quality, assistance, and behavior interfering. But always important to think about starting with what a child's strengths are. And all too often, especially those of us who've been in special ed for a long time, focus on what the deficits are and what a child's needs are. And we rarely take the time to talk about what is a strength, what is a talent, what is something that they can do independently without support, consistently across settings, time, and material. What do they like to do? What are they prone to do? So we really want to think about taking some time to look at whatever notes we use, whatever scores we give, and really have a conversation about what do the data show us, what have our observations revealed, what have our conversations landed on in terms of what a child's able to do independent, with some flexibility. They're able to adapt to the situations and demands. They do it consistently, and they're able to change it depending on how the situation changes. So that brings us to the actual scoring notes that are listed in the AEPS, but you don't have to use just these. So unlike scoring where you can only use 2, 1, or 0, you could use other notes. If you're using the AEPS-I, the online version, it's a little bit harder and you'd have to use your comments, but we're really thinking about A for assistance, B for behavior interfered, R for report, M for modifications, D for direct test, and Q for quality. And the numbers to the side remind us what numbers we can use when we use a certain note. So we're not going to talk about report in this recording. Modifications was covered in another recording, and direct test doesn't really impact too much about a child's score. Assistance, behavior interfered, and quality definitely will have an impact if you're using numerical summaries. So we just want to walk through quickly behavior interfered, assistance, and quality, knowing that assistance can go quickly because it's embedded with modification. But just a reminder that assistance is when the environment, a peer, or the adult does some part of the criterion. So if you're using the child observation data recording form without criteria, this is another reminder about why we need to have the criterion close. And so we start off thinking all learners need some sort of assistance. So maybe we don't need to put a note at all. We just score it a 0 or a 1 as the child's performance is emerging. But over time, if we feel that this child needs more assistance or continued assistance beyond what we would expect for their level of intervention that they've received, their age, their exposure, and so forth, this can start to show a pattern of where they require more assistance than we would have expected. And then on that continuum, when we finally decide that this assistance is going to be something that's going to be long-term, perhaps even lifelong, it can become a modification where we change how the child performs the item so that it becomes culturally, linguistically, and individually non-biased. That then takes us to behavior interfered. This is really one where we have to think about internalizing and externalizing. We have to think about things that are kind of hard for us to measure, about motivation and perseverance and what brings a kid joy and pleasure and interest. When does a child feel like trying again, and when will a child just walk away? There are also types of behaviors that are kind of in our face in terms of running or screaming or refusing, perhaps even biting or throwing objects. These are clearly things that we would see and they would jump out at us, but we need to keep track of them from a data perspective so that we're not being influenced by sort of our own reactions and our own fears, but we really have some objective data telling us when a child is doing something, what came before the something that the child did, and really give us a way to respond and connect to the child versus really thinking about this kid as one who has challenging behaviors. And again, just remember that behavior interfering isn't always intentional, and most often is not intentional in young children. It is not really under their control, many of these behaviors and feelings and reactions, primarily because their brain is not developed and won't be fully developed until their mid-20s. So we have to remember what we expect from children at this age should be some level of refusal, ignoring, inattention, and aggression. Those sorts of things. There are 3, there are 4, there are 5, and on top of that, they may have a developmental delay. So we need to be really careful that we interpret the B with some of our knowledge about brain research, our knowledge about what are developmentally appropriate expectations, and so forth. We'll skip over a report for right now because it doesn't really have a lot to do with helping us make an interpretation. It's used as a way to really broaden our perspective and make sure that we're getting information from multiple sources. And again, modifications is a bit longer of a story. We have to really understand how something goes from just learner, a novice, to needing assistance, to really becoming a long-term change. And same with direct test, it's not that prevalent. We don't use it that often if we're using the AEPS according to how it's to be done, which is through observation, through play, through ongoing interactions. We shouldn't have to do these repeated trials and prompts. However, if we do have something where it's a direct test, particularly if we're using the AEPS during, let's say, the eligibility process, we may want to make a notation so that if the child's performance looks different later when it's in a more authentic situation, we understand why there's a difference in scoring. And then that brings us to quality. In the previous slide, we said that the score is a 2 or a 1 because really it doesn't make sense that you get a 0 and then say the quality was poor. But sometimes people have argued that the child does not yet perform a skill because the quality is in the way, kind of like a barrier, if you will. So really the way I think about quality is when I use the word too, T-O-O. So if the child does something too loud, too soft, too hard, too fast, too much, too little, too quickly, too slowly, to, I can't remember which ones I already said. So we really want to think about this. It could be unusual, it could be annoying for that fact, but it's really still functional for the child. The moment when this quality, this too fast, too slow, too loud, too soft, becomes a problem for the child, then it becomes something that we need to attend to as an intervention perspective. But otherwise, these might be things that are just unique to the child, unique to a culture, unique to a family, unique to a particular child's temperament, and or how their disability plays out.